will also start coming to the forefront. And so there is this very significant kind of sometimes yo-yoing. There's this very significant back and forth between having to confront trauma and also, you know, seeing who you truly are. And it really is Christ and the Holy Spirit that is flowing within you, that is reflecting who you truly are within you as you work. And you're being called to release these lower things, these lower impulses, these lower habits that, you know, these aspects of yourself that you really aren't, whatever lies you're living. You're going to be called to release that the more and more and more you do this. Okay, and this is why a lot of people will start out practicing professionally in the spiritual world, you know, and then they quit after a decade or less, is because people think that psychic ability is like an accessory, and it's not. It is a lifelong way of being that is very intense. Okay? So when you are doing this work, your emotions intensify. You feel things, you begin to feel things much more deeply. You become more empathic. Your thoughts intensify. So you really begin to see your ideologies, what your cosmology is. You get this, you know, stark look at what it is you believe. Whereas if you're not doing all of the spiritual development, you may not even be called to examine what you really think about things. You may not even realize what your positions are. So when you enter into the spiritual field, those become more and more obvious, and also whether or not they're truthful become more and more obvious. So what's true in your life becomes more obvious to you, and also your darkness becomes more obvious to you. So the dark gets darker, the light gets lighter. Also, that means that you're changing. That means that your personality is changing. When everything in your life becomes magnified, you're going to change. You're not going to be the same person that you were 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, and you'll change rapidly. And your family and your friends, they may not understand who this person is.
Puberty part 2.
And so you'll also get social pressure, family pressure to maybe become that person that they know you to be before you've had your spiritual awakening, before you've taken on a mantle of spiritual service. And so you'll have to deal with the fact that you're not the same person anymore, and that your relationships won't be the same anymore. Now, the individuals that are truly important in your life and that are there for you, and there isn't some kind of unhealthy thing going on, those relationships will deepen. And you'll also have new relationships come in that represent who you truly are. And so you have to expect this kind of shuffling around of your social scene and even family relationships, whatever that is, as you take on the responsibility of being who you truly are. Because in order to be a working mystic, to work in the spiritual field at all, you have to be genuine. You have to be who you truly are. You cannot lie to yourself and say, well, I'm going to be one person front facing and another person behind the scenes just so I can take from people or take from the world. That will hurt you if you try to do psychic work like that. And I think we can all think about different people who probably ended up, for whatever reason, taking that path. And it didn't end very well when selfishness is applied to mysticism. So another thing that can happen because of this principle of magnification is that your body can also, you can get old aches and old pains that come back, And whatever is going on in your body that is imbalanced will come forward in a much more intense way. Because again, these very high spiritual beings are now working through you, and their energy is actually passing through your physical body. It goes through the astral body to the etheric body, into the nervous system, and into the waters of the body, and into the bone. So wherever you have some kind of pain or trauma, or where there's a presence of darkness, that is going to cause the body to hurt. So everything, even in a physical sense with health things, can also become magnified, because spiritual energy is a magnifier. In order to progress in your life and in your work, you have to become more and more like your angel, more and more like Christ, more and more like these exalted figures. And you cannot be stagnant. You have to become more and more like them, and they will work further to raise you. So your own service in the world is also your own initiation process with your angel and with Christ. So it necessitates your own development, and your own capacities necessitate you becoming closer to Christ and closer to your angel. Now, obviously, there's another path that can come about where you can get into, you could say, a dark relationship with lower entities, with demonic entities. And you can have a certain kind of psychic sight. It won't be creative. It's a different kind of psychic perception when you work with a demonic plane. But you can make that pact as well. But it will destroy your consciousness over time. It will darken your life. Okay? And if you sort of get to this point where you get to this sticking spot where you're spiritually developing and everything's going well, and then you get to this really challenging time and you just can't drop the ego, you just can't drop your lower ego, and you just cling to it, what can happen is that you'll experience blind spots. You'll experience psychosis, you'll experience burnout, and you'll experience problems. So when you refuse to surrender your ego, your lower ego, your selfishness, the longer that you do that when you are called to, means that you're going to develop some very big blind spots. There's things in the spiritual world you just will not be able to perceive because you're too selfish. You're clinging too much to the material world, and you're clinging too much to an idea of yourself, or you're too attached to, your conceptions of who you need to be rather than who you really are. And that's what causes blind spots. That's what causes over time also psychosis and madness, is this insistence on going into the spiritual world or spiritual forces and engaging with them, but refusing to surrender your lower self at the threshold. That's what causes these bizarre readings and this bizarre stuff going on. It's poor attunement. So, there's different, as I mentioned, there's two different paths you can go. One is proper attunement that leads to your evolution and you having clear sight, and then there's the darker path where you can go to that doesn't require you to surrender your ego. Demonic entities actually tell you that you're so wonderful, you're so great, we have all this fame or money for you. But then you won't get actual genuine psychic information. You'll only get false light or recycled information from the lower astral plane. And quite frankly, ChatGPT can probably already do that anyway. You know, a lot of this regurgitation of stuff we already know is already happening through computers, but it's that real creative ability to bring forward information for the time can only come through the attunement to Christ and the Holy Spirit and your angel, which is within that purview. So that attunement has to be there in order to evolve properly and in order to be protected. But there are ways that people can appear psychic or have very low level psychic abilities by going through the lower planes and sort of sharing, you could say, false light information. But it's tricky because there can still be psychic processes in there. You can still get predictions, you can still do things like that. It's just at a much lower level. Okay. All right. So when you
I'm not going to
into
chair.
the spiritual world, especially if you choose it as a profession, you become subject to a magnification process. All the rhythms in your life can become more intense, and there is a pressure to increasingly attune oneself to higher ideals and ways of being. This is because psychic work is rooted in the enmeshment with the enmeshment of you with your angel, with the Holy Spirit, which means in order to receive psychic messages, you have to raise yourself and become like them. So your angel is not the Holy Spirit. Your angel is your guardian angel or your spirit guide that is the spiritual being that is responsible for your life, for all the aspects of your life that you may not be able to obviously control. There is a hierarchy of angels. Here it is here. And man is overlapped by angels and spiritual beings all the way up the hierarchy until the, Godhead. Now, it's very important that the spiritual hierarchies are actually understood, because that really answers the question about spirit guides much more deeply. And it's not a simple conversation that we can have here. We will get more into that in my classes this fall, the idea of spirit guides, the different entities and things like that. But for our purpose here, your angel and the Holy Spirit, Christ, these are the entities that work through you when you are doing spiritual work, if you attune properly to them. So this attunement can obviously create intense purification and life changes that are unexpected. All of the impurities and lower impulses in your astral body become obvious. Over time, with the right efforts and attunement, the astral body does clarify, and it becomes a crystal clear body in which to receive and speak the Christ and Holy Spirit. So when you can actually get to a point through spiritual union where your astral body, actually becomes completely purified. It no longer has any lower impulses. It no longer has the sort of trauma in it that you started out with. And that is the definition of a clear channel, a clear vessel. You'll hear this sometimes in psychic development, at least good psychic development classes, where the teacher will say, you want to have a clear vessel. Well, you can't just be a clear vessel just from meditating for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or your entire life. To be a clear vessel, you actually have to transform the trauma and lower impulses that are within your astral body. So to become a clear vessel requires transformation. It requires the transformation of your astral body from cloudy and having traumas and wounds in it to eventually over time becoming clear. And the clearer the astral body is, the clearer the psychic, the clearer the information, the more accurate it is, and the more the more clairs open up and are obvious, And there really is different degrees of psychic perception based on the clarity of the astral body. And these used to be the different degrees in mystery schools and spiritual development. Whereas nowadays, it's sort of like, do this exercise to open the third eye, which is fine. Those exercises can be wonderful. But we really have to understand that having spiritual capacities is really the direct result of the purification of your astral body. Like, it really depends on that process, which is the process of you going in and healing yourself. And it's not easy, it's not fun, but that is what creates that clear body, which allows your angel to work through you without any distortions, with minimal blind spots, okay? Now, when you have a blind spot or you're not seeing something clearly, it doesn't always mean that, like, you have some trauma that you need to dig into to understand it. Sometimes information is held back from us due to overwhelmment, or due to it not being time, or due to or for other reasons. So sometimes when you are working, things can be held back from you, and it's for reasons of timing or reasons of the body not being able to handle it. There's other reasons why things can be held back that are not a blind spot. But blind spots really refer to having a crooked cosmology, especially. Like, actually not understanding how the cosmos works is more like the blind spots that develop when the individual is not working on their structure. They can't see the cosmos clearly. And that is the kind of blind spots that happen when we're not working on ourselves. And it doesn't matter where you are in your psychic development journey or your career, you are always called to do this, the same as someone who's starting out day one. This is not something that you transcend, like, I never need to do this anymore. This is the great stabilizer, the great equalizer that every single person has to do, no matter where you think you are in your practice. Okay? When an individual does not dedicate themselves to a moral life and a moral cause, so they're not attuning themselves properly, they will experience burnout, ill health, and psychosis, and these blind spots. This is because the lower impulses in the astral body were not purified and were over time repeatedly magnified instead through improper spiritual union. Okay. All right. So if you are interested in signing up for next Sunday, the link should be on the chat now, and it should also be in the description or appearing very shortly. But let's carry on to the second principle. So the second principle is the principle of sacrifice. Sacrifice. There is no psychic connection unless you make a sacrifice. Now, when you're first starting out, the sacrifice happens unconsciously. And you may not really realize you're doing it because we are in constant communion with our spiritual guides anyway. But then the more you go deeper and deeper into your abilities, you will be called to actually understand what is occurring within you when you're doing psychic work. So there's so many people who are psychic, but they could not explain to you how they are psychic. They could not explain their abilities to you. That's not really good enough, in my opinion. If you're going to be out there and you're going to be talking with people, you should have some idea of what you're actually going through. And this is not a statement of arrogance. This is for your own safety And this is for you to actually understand how forces are working through you so you can adapt and make sure that it is healthy, right? So the principle of sacrifice is that in order for you to get spiritual information, to have a vision, to clairaudiently hear something, to claircognizantly get a download, a knowing, in order for you to have any of the clairalliances, the tasting, the smelling, the clairgustance, all of the different clairs to feel as an empath or clairsentience, all of the clairs, okay? All of that actually requires a piece of you, a piece of your essence to be transformed through your angel. Okay, so your essence, your body is actually going through a small direct transformation with your angel, which is above and beyond normal thought and normal basic intuitive processes for people who are not a practicing mystic. Okay, so when you are doing something spiritual in a big way, you're taking that on as your life, you are giving a part of your actual body, a part of your actual being, to be transformed into the body of your angel and into the higher planes from there. So how you get spiritual information is through this transubstantiation that goes on, this literal bridging of it actually takes your body to do that. So you can imagine it like a kind of mutual digestion that occurs between you and the spiritual world. It's like a sacrifice of your etheric body and even physical body to even get that going. Okay? So it's not like some process that happens in this imaginary way where there isn't a literal piece of you that is being transformed every time you do spiritual work.
I don't know how long this live stream's gonna be. I'm bored.
Like, yeah, it seems like a live stream.
Has to be an exchange, and there's a
It might be like
sacrifice
2-3 hours
every
sometimes.
single time.
I don't like this. I don't like her.
What she's saying is
She's
basically
kind of
correct, but there are caveats. You can do it yourself. All you need to do is understand psychology a little bit of parapsychology, and sound waves.
Yeah, she's just trying to sell a course. Like, that's what I don't appreciate, is when people are obviously just trying to sell a course.
Well, why can't you get paid?
She's not saying
people-
because she's not saying anything that we don't all know, that we haven't heard before. She's not offering anything, really. Nothing worth paying for in this fucking economy. What is she sacrificing? She looks kind of rich to me.
Well, maybe she
I'm
got
all
rich
I'm
by
all for people I'm all for people
trying.
making money. I'm all for people making money, but not when they're obviously a fucking LARPer. You know, like just reciting ChatGPT,
1992.
sell courses.
I was the chief of aerospace medicine, and he said, I've got something to show you even you have never seen.
You wanna watch that Diana Pasholka interview?
I don't know. I don't fucking know who that is.
He's fucking great.
Well, I think
This
that
one. Did we watch
being
this?
alive is an
We were already
analysis
watching this,
period.
so
By a guy named Robert Hastings.
Yeah,
I don't know where we were in the video. Why would it not be like left where we were?
and that's what happened.
Yeah. Well, that's and now I'm just gonna be open about it because it feels like the cat's out of the bag with all this stuff. I used to try to maintain sort of impartiality.
Yeah.
And then the intensification of
Like, was that this is Yeah, okay, so what happens is that Francis is praying and something comes out of the sky, and the way that it's described is that there's a lot of like sparks and it seems kind of spinning, and there's an eye, right, that comes down.
She's
and,
translating all religious
and there's
texts that she has
different
access
versions
to. The church also translating, and many religious scholars and translators like her.
Too.
She's
so
just,
that's what
you know,
people need to know,
gone
is
to
that
school
there's
for it,
the
was
artistic
Christian
version
in Bible
of it
school or whatever.
and the dogmatic version of it. So the
I
information
don't
I was
believe
able to
I don't
get
believe
was
someone
that
can be
the
Christian
angel
and then not
was
Christian.
harsh with
Same thing with like
okay
veganism. You
now
can't just be
we're not
vegan and
quite
then
sure what that
not
means.
vegan.
That's how it gets translated. So it deals harshly with him, and he receives
Like you
burns
either
maybe.
are or you're
So
not.
this is then interpreted as being the stigmata, and it's interpreted as the angel, like Jesus talking to him, like, you know, have this messenger coming down and talking to him. Now, this isn't unlike things that you see today, like in contemporary, you know, UFO. That's the thing that I was trying to point out, was that this looks very similar to things that people talk about today.
Radiation damage and all the stuff
Yeah,
Kit Green
yeah.
and Gary
Like
Nolan
Gary
talked
Nolan's
about.
work. I mean,
Yeah.
that's when it really hit me. Was I was actually at the New Mexico site, and we hadn't gone there yet. It was the night before, and we were all just hanging out, having a beer. And Gary decided he was going to share his research with us and photos and everything. And it took like 2 hours to go through a lot of this stuff. And I was horrified at, you know, because and in fact, part of his motivation was to try to stop this from happening, right, to people.
Do you think that my mind went, for whatever reason, when you were talking about the story of St. Francis of Assisi to the Ark of the Covenant and the holiest of holies, and you have to be a certain level of purity to make contact, and if you don't, then somehow it does violence to you or something.
So so this question of your purity or else, okay. So in a lot of traditions that have these, you know, that discuss this contact with non-human intelligences, whether we interpret them as like deities or, you know, UFOs or whatnot. A lot of them do have this idea, similar idea, as in the Merkaba tradition, right?
Yeah.
You do have to be, and by the way, you also see this in the Socratic tradition, but strangely, it's with philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you have to be a certain age, and you have to have done so much math and purified yourself in order to understand philosophy, like truth and things like that. So you see this. So now, I don't know if that's true or not, but this is the historical fact that people believe this, and people have prepared themselves to do this. Now, listen, when people ask me, because a lot of people do, I have people say I go talk to a class or, you know, do some podcast, and I'll have somebody ask me, how can I make contact, right? And I don't recommend that at all.
Yeah, right. Right, especially not in some sort of recreational, you know, like it's fun or whatever, like good luck. You know?
Yeah, I don't recommend it.
So it's dangerous. I think if it happens, it'll happen when you least expect it. And you should reality is set up the way it is for a reason, I think.
Yeah.
And you can just move through your own life and contemplate virtue and get where you need to go through that. And then I do think, it's like staring at the sun for too long when you kind of study this stuff or whatever.
It's the heroic dose.
Yeah, totally.
Just don't do it.
Just don't do it, or 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and you know. But really, don't always go looking for it. Do you think that the Last Supper was some sort of hermetic ritual? Was like maybe a mystery ritual? Like there's another religious studies professor at Princeton, I believe, named Elaine Pagels.
Yeah, I know her.
You know her?
Yeah, she's great.
And she wrote Beyond Belief.
Yeah, she's great.
And she talks about the Gospel of Thomas.
Yeah.
And how Jesus takes Thomas aside, whispers secret words to him. And maybe the whole thing, even if you read the book of John, the whole thing, there's a reading of it where the whole thing feels a little more choreographed than
Yes,
you might
absolutely.
expect.
Yeah.
And so do you think maybe the wine was like the kekion, this Greek drink spiked with ergot that maybe allowed him to see beyond the veil? And then there's this other sort of, we're getting deep conspiracy territory, but I'm friends with Randall Carlson and, Brian Murarescu, and they suspect maybe Jesus never died, and Joseph of Arimathea actually just took Jesus in, who was lifeless when Pilate sort of poked him, but actually resuscitated him with herbs. This is probably all very heretical for your religious studies professor, so if you feel like you need to say this is bullshit, please just let me know. But
Elaine Pagels also studies, she studies heretics. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, so is there any
We
chance
don't have any, we're not like practitioners, or if we are, we don't bring it into our work.
Certain Gnostic interpretations of the New Testament maintain the belief that Jesus actually never died, that the Last Supper was all more of a choreographed mystery ritual than meets the eye, where Jesus was sedated and then resuscitated. Take Luke 22:10. Jesus tells the disciples,
"Keep your eyes open as you enter the city. A man carrying a water jug will meet you. Follow him home. Then speak with the owner of the house. The teacher wants to know, where is the guest room where I can eat the Passover meal with my disciples?"
Already there are references to something going on behind the scenes. Who's the guy with the water jug? Then in the book of Matthew, Jesus says,
"Verily I say unto you, that one of you shall betray me."
so he knows he's about to be betrayed. And then he drinks hyssop, an herbal sedative. Maybe so the Romans think he's dead. In fact, the popular account has Jesus dying within 6 hours while on the cross, which doesn't really make biological sense. The apocryphal Gospel of Thomas goes even further. These are the secret sayings which the living Jesus spoke, in which Judas Thomas wrote down.
And he said, "Whoever finds the interpretation of these sayings will not experience death."
So all of a sudden, the disciple supposedly betraying Jesus is maybe his closest confidant, recording the secret knowledge of immortality. Joseph of Arimathea, who is supposedly a disciple as well, indicating that there are more than 12 disciples, then comes to retrieve Jesus' body. Joseph embalms him with herbs, myrrh and aloe, which you might do if you were trying to resuscitate someone. The text even reads that Pilate granted Joseph the corpse of Jesus, using the Greek term patoma, or a lifeless body. But when Joseph asks for the body of Jesus, he uses the word soma, meaning to save, heal, or make the body whole. Finally, when the disciples go to roll away the stone of the sepulchre, it had already been rolled away, maybe by a recently resuscitated Jesus. Is there any chance, do you think, that the Last Supper was a mystery ritual?
Okay, so I have to talk as a not practitioner here.
Sure.
And as a religious studies professor.
Yeah.
So listen, when I look at that ritual,
Yeah.
The Last Supper,
Yeah.
which is, they're Jewish, so it's a Seder, right?
Yeah, exactly. Passover.
Yeah, okay. But we have to wonder why it was uptaken then into the Roman Catholic Church, because it wasn't like the agape feasts. They weren't really that. They weren't that ritual.
Right.
So then let's think about this. What distinguishes certain types of institutions or societies from some sorts of institutions that are more like smaller institutions, like tribal villages or indigenous communities? They basically believe in the presence of, spirituality in many, many things, like in forests, in rivers, sky beams, in trees and things like that. So there's a sense of presence. Well, then, what happens in the institution of Rome is there's no presence, right? And so you make this, what they're doing is they're recreating presence. I think so.
And what do you mean by presence exactly?
Well, okay, so if you're Catholic and you're Orthodox, you know this, that ritual is supposed to be when the priest does the transubstantiation of, it's supposed to be the actual presence of Jesus. You hear the bell in the Mass, it goes ding, and then that's the presence, not just it's also the bread and the wine become the blood and the body. And that's not symbolic for Catholics or for Orthodox.
You're
it becomes symbolic for Protestants.
And so, oh, wow. So is Catholicism more sort of cannibalistic than we realize or something? Like,
Well,
like
of
you're
course.
eating? Yeah,
It is.
of course.
I mean, yeah, there's like an altar.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to tell you this, and you'd be shocked.
Yeah.
This happens to my students.
Yeah.
When we talk about, I say, okay, but a lot of them are Protestants, so they don't know that this is what Catholics and
Yeah.
Orthodox Christians are doing when they're like doing this thing on the altar. And this brings me back to let's talk about René Girard.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because René
Okay,
Girard is like, this is exactly what he's talking about, because he talks a lot about structural violence,
Yeah.
right? Structural violence. So he basically asks, why are we so mean to each other? Like, why do we always feel the need to kill one another?
Yeah.
Like, what is this? And so I think about my life, as a young person, going through college, then going through graduate school, and all the books that I read, like, some of them really stood out to me. And they were Plato's Republic, which asked, could there be a just society? And there were the Gospels of Jesus, right? Obviously, I became a religious studies professor. And there was René Girard's work. Really, each of these texts say that this is structural. So when you think, like, as a kid kind of growing up with parents who were liberal, we got to save the world. Well, yeah, we do have to save the world. But the thing is that it's structural. The bad is structural.
Right.
You can't do enough.
Yes. And Girard is interesting because, yeah, he had sort of a bit of a cult following as a professor. And I think there's a Roberto Colasso quote there, foxes and their hedgehogs. There's people that know a lot about a lot, and then there's somebody that knows one thing and you can apply it. It's sort of a grand theory of everything.
Oh, yeah, that's him. That's René Girard, yeah.
And that was René Girard, because he was sort of a hedgehog.
Yeah.
And in his case, I think he thought that the history of the world was the history of violence, and you had these sort of pagan scapegoating cycles. And there's something, the only thing that is, in some sense, he situates Christianity as a non-unique religion because it's just another scapegoating story.
That's right.
But the way in which it is unique is that it sort of signals the end of history, because for the first time, the mythology and the story is taking the side of the scapegoat and not the mob, not the masses, which then you sort of unlock this idea that is both maybe saving of humanity, but also destroying of it. Like it sort of signals the end of the world or something. Because the scapegoating rituals are cathartic control processes to keep society moving forward, where you have sort of rivalrous interactions around kind of desires that everybody have that are emergent. And the scapegoat is then ritually sacrificed, and then that pacifies society, and it can keep going. But it can't keep going if you know that you're doing a wrong thing in scapegoating this character. And so there's something about Christianity which is subversive and messes with this technology that keeps the world going in a way that sows the seeds of the apocalypse.
That's right. That's right. So the thing is that and by the way, A+ on that.
Thank you.
That was really amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so the thing about it, though, is that, so the Christian recognition that we killed Jesus, right?
Yes.
We are the ones
yes,
that...
guilt.
Yeah.
Depravity.
Right.
Yes.
And so he remember we talked about a defense mechanism. Like, a student asked me the other day, what's hopeful, or is there something to hope for? And I said, yes, But in part of the answer, we were talking about religion. Does religion offer hope? And in one sense, yes. But in another sense, it's a defense mechanism, right? And it defends us against. So, religion springs up as a defense against our need to be this violent and to hurt each other like this and to kill the neighbor, because we want what the neighbor has. And Christianity, the beauty that Girard interprets Christianity as being. And by the way, a lot of times I don't think Christianity lives up to Girard's idea. Because once we then perform this constantly, we become, like, you didn't even know that it was a sacrifice, this mass. So the reality of it is that we're in the ritual and we kill this innocent victim. We're killing a perfect, good person is what we're doing, and then eating them, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so but once we start to do this again and again and again, we just don't know what we're doing anymore, and then we become programmatic.
Yes.
People don't have, so that's why I think something like a UFO then comes in to break that up and basically say, there's something here, and it's actually not within your program.
Yes. And I think if you see the synchronicities, you sort of know you're on the right path. You know you're in some like exciting whirlpool. When you see the signs.
Yeah. Okay, I learned a bit about this actually.
Yeah.
Tyson Yunkaporta's book, Sand Talk, is really good, by the way.
Cool.
But he calls these synchronicities and these kinds of things that happen extra cognitive events.
Yeah.
Okay. And he says that they're natural things. What they do is and I got this from studying creativity, is that they actually provide dopamine, right? Yeah. So when you're like doing something that's really creative and maybe even productive, like creating a technology or something, then you're gonna really enjoy it. Like, you know, when people get into a creative space and they just go and they can't stop, that's what's happening with them.
Yeah, wow. So it's like intermittent reinforcement where like you get a little dose of the dopamine or something.
That's right. I kind of think that synchronicities are more how it actually is. And that when we get out of our program, we actually go, whoa, okay, this is how it is. But then we just go back into our program because we're all trained, right, on a program.
That brings you back to the Gerard.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the defense mechanism theory that we have of life that we figured out.
Yeah,
Amar?
we did. What do you think is the relationship between time and UFOs? Is there some interesting relationship? Are they from the future? Are aliens and Close Encounters of the Third Kind just experiences with our future selves? Or what do you think?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Okay, so what's really interesting is that, so after around 2019 or so, I started to meet people who were people from technology communities, right? Techies, basically.
Yeah.
And a lot of them really resonated with Tyler and recognized themselves. And a lot of them were creators of AI. And some of them did quantum computing.
So UFO in the secret hangar.
Wow.
And when I sat down in his chair, there's a saucer 20 feet across, was sort of like a modified egg. There were no rivets, no seams, but then later on, it rotated. It was clear as day. It said U.S. Air Force. But then when I said, why would we build it in a design like this? He looked at me and went, we got it from them. I flew helicopters and I flew F-16s. No vehicle I have ever known of could obtain a 45-degree angle of attack without moving. So when these companies say, look, we made this thing, look at how fancy it is, that's to get the people's attention so they don't look at this other thing that they're spending all the money on.
Different parts of the brain have different activities.
Well, you know that, don't you?
Maybe you should interview me.
In 2023, when David Grush testified under oath before Congress, he explained to the world and to our system of government a host of staggering revelations. The military has an alien craft retrieval program. There were bodies in some of these vehicles, and he also confirmed what had long been speculated, that some combination of secret military programs and private aerospace companies have developed reverse-engineered versions of this alien technology. While many of you watching this channel might have thought, like me, that Grush's personal bravery and commitment to disclosing these truths was worthy of the utmost respect. It was unfortunate to see the tried and tested playbook of discrediting and ad hominem attacks that emerged in the wake of his testimony.
Yeah, definitely experienced some really nuts stuff. I don't like throwing shade, but like Neil deGrasse Tyson, right?
Oh, yeah.
He's made up his mind. I've read his tweets, and I'm like, dude, you have a PhD in physics? Where's your curiosity? I can't even believe.
Yeah. There's no evidence that would convince an authentic skeptic.
However, even within UFO world, there were some who questioned the fact that Grush had not personally seen these crafts, but was relying on the testimony of dozens of those who had, members of the military or government that he hoped would personally come forward and back up his claims. One man watching this testimony knew that he could be one of those to come forward.
I thought, I've got his 6 o'clock covered.
To stand up in a similar way, with all of the risk of reputation, and bravely break his silence about what he had seen. Dr. Gregory Rogers, a recently retired chief flight surgeon for NASA and the US Air Force, and former director of aerospace medicine, has decided that now is the right time to tell the world what he had witnessed in stunning, first-hand detail, that we have a craft that in some way or another didn't come from here. This wasn't something in the sky, off in the distance, or on radar coming out of the ocean. This was something in our possession. But this conversation isn't only about UFOs. It's about God, the universe, science, as well as life and death. Dr. Rogers has been witness to the most confronting sights that most of us can scarcely imagine. And in this conversation, he bravely speaks about his PTSD and the memories he carries, and why he believes UFO disclosure and what he saw in our possession is the only path toward progress. So today, I'm so proud to present this conversation with the brilliant Dr. Greg Rogers. This is an absolute honor. I have Greg Rogers here. You are another just extremely interesting witness who I've been trying to get on the show for a while. Thank you so much to Chris Leto Files, an amazing show around UFOs, and he's also a former pilot, and he does a really amazing interview with you. So I recommend everybody go check that out. But he introduced us, and after watching your interview with him, I was just fascinated by what you saw and your background, which I think is really beyond reproach. And so I'm very excited to get into this.
I'm very pleased to be here. This is an honor.
Oh, it's a total honor for me. And I appreciate your courage in coming out and speaking out. Before we get into that, just what's a little bit about your background?
Well, I was a flight surgeon for the United States Air Force and became the chief of aerospace medicine at the 45th Space Wing, which included the Eastern Space and Missile Center, Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, Patrick Air Force Base, and then also the Eastern Missile Range. But as such, we also supported tenant units that included a vast array of units, including we had aircraft from the 9th Strategic Reconnaissance Wing that most people would know as U-2s. And we had the Air Force Technical Applications Center, which is a whole other story, but I did deploy to the South Atlantic and South America with AFTAC. But we did search and rescue missions out in the ocean. If somebody managed to sink their boat and call in for help, we would go out and rescue them. So I had a wide range of duties. Now, then the one that most people find most fascinating was that I was the senior flight surgeon for the Astronaut Rescue and Recovery Team at Kennedy Space Center. So every time we had a space shuttle launch, I would climb in Jolly 1. We had other flight surgeons that would get in Jolly 2 and Jolly 3, so we would clear the box to make sure that there was no unwanted people into the downrange area at the time of launch. But then the 3 helicopters with the 3 flight doctors on it and 3 sets of PJs, pararescue jumpers, were always sitting at the shuttle landing facility for any launch or landing opportunities for the space shuttle, because nothing about flying the space shuttle is routine. Even at the end of its service time, it was still considered an experimental vehicle.
Wow. So that's a pretty important role. I mean, you were kind of hands-on with
Yes.
people inside the space shuttle at its kind of inception moment.
Well, plus I helped to make other changes. As an example, when I first got there in 1989, do you remember the orange launch entry suits that the astronauts wore?
Sure, yeah.
Well, in their right lower leg pocket, they had 2 chem lights, and they were both red. As soon as I heard that, I said, "You got to be kidding. What are you doing with red chem lights?" And they said, "Well, we want to make sure it doesn't affect their night vision." I said, "Forget their night vision. First of all, green chem lights are not going to affect their night vision. They're not bright enough. But we can't see the red chem lights on our night vision goggles when we're looking for them unless we fly right over them. You give them green chem lights, and on a clear night, we can spot them 5 miles away. So what I'm concerned about is my ability to rescue those astronauts and save their lives. So it took me a year and a half to get NASA to switch to the green chem lights.
That's a big deal. So you were the guy behind the switch from the red chem lights to the green chem lights.
Yes, and in fact, after one of the MODATA exercises, that's an exercise where the astronauts would bail out into the Atlantic Ocean, and then all the rescue forces have to go find and rescue them, regardless of the day or night or anything else. But Colonel Shokaitis was the head of DDMS, which is the Department of Defense Manned Space Support Office. And so the following day, when we had our debriefing, when it got around to me, he said, "Okay, Major Rogers, what are you complaining about this year?" I said, "I'm going to complain about 3 of the same things I complained about last year because they didn't get fixed." And so one of them was the chem lights. And after me throwing a fit in that meeting, it was only like 2 months later that we finally got the chem lights fixed.
Wow. Crazy. Well, that's an amazing thing that you can, take credit for.
Yeah. Well, people think of NASA as the smartest, greatest thing. Some of the NASA managers wanted to make spacesuits, and they did not want to involve the Air Force or the rescue forces. So they made these beautiful blue flight suits. You can still see astronauts having pictures taken in the blue flight suits. So when you go back in history, you'll see that. When they showed it to the rescue forces, we all went, "You got to be kidding. Those are blue. When they bail out into the ocean, how are we going to see them?" So even if you go back to like the first few launches, STS 1, 2, 3, 4, they had to go to Beale Air Force Base and borrow the yellow spacesuits that the U-2 and SR-71 guys fly, because you couldn't fly with the NASA ones. So anytime, go back and look at Young and Crippen in STS-1, they've got yellow spacesuits on.
Whoa. Pretty crazy. Well, yeah, no, you think of it as this kind of untouchably perfect, organization, and I guess
it's not that.
Yeah, well, it all boils down to humans and human error. So for context for the audience, you're at Patrick Air Force Base, and Patrick Air Force Base.
Gundam versus Zeta. Howdy, we're recording to YouTube. Hope you're doing okay. Did we hear me? We're recording to YouTube. Oh, I didn't even get to see. Hello?
撤退します。勝つ出ます。カニーヌばかりにやらせるもんか。
遅れちゃダメよ。
分かってます。邪魔だ。
ハツは回避して。ハツ、戻ってください。
そんなものに当たるもんか。消えねえ。なんだと。なんだと。
直撃させる。
なんだと。邪魔。なんだと。死ぬもんか。なんだと。なんだと。マジか。ここまでだな。もらったぜ。勝つ。撤退します。了解。行きます。敵はどこだ。右から来るのか、左からか。
遅れちゃダメよ。
なんだと。なんだと。しまった。何。
ハ
Got that, punk.
やったのか。
ジェリドを死なせはしない。ジェリド、あなたのことを私が守ってみせる。この程度で、この程度で。この程度で。
発進します。よし、行くぞ。よし、当たれ。そこ。
ジェリドを死なせはしない。ジェリド、あなたのことを私が守ってみせる。倒す、あの方のために。損傷で。
アポリ発進 OK。これより戦闘エリアに入る。やったのか。
せはしない。ジェリー、あなたのことは私が守ってみせる。どうだ。
アプリ出ます。よし、行くぞ。そこ。やったのか。よし。
ジェリドを死なせはしない。ジェリド、あなたのことは私が守ってみせる。今だ。この程度で。この程度で。そこを撃させる。もらった。どうだ。倒す。あの方のために。
発進します。
Bite me right. Actually die when I kill you. Gee.
発進 OK。 よし行くぞ。よしよし。アポリ発進 OK。 よし行くぞ。よしやったのか。
ジェリトを死なせはしない。ジェリト、あなたのことを私が守ってみせる。この程度で。どうだ。発進します。よし行くぞ。当たれ。よしよし。
信 OK。 よし行くぞ。やったのか。
直撃させる。
やったのか。そこ俺は味方だ。
ジェリドを死なせはしない。ジェリド、あなたのこと私が守ってみせる。
Really, even though I specifically dodged that attack. But okay, it just homed in on me. Whatever, you fucking piece of shit game.
これより戦闘エリアに入る。撃ち落とせ。どうだ。よし。
ジェリドを死なせはしない。ジェリド、あなたのこと私が守ってみせる。この程度で。
味方か。よし。発進します。よし行くぞ。やったのか。一撃破。よし。
ジェリドを死なせはしない。ジェリド、あなたのこと私が守ってみせる。
発進します。よし、行くぞ。よし、撃ち落とせ。一気撃破。
ジェリドを死なせはしない。ジェリド、あなたのこと私が守ってみせる。隙間は味方よ。
撃ち落とせ。
この程度で。これで。この程度で。この程度で。倒す。あの方のために。
You lie through your fucking teeth, game.
発進します。これより戦闘エリアに入る。
直撃させる。
アプリ出ます。よし、行くぞ。よし。やったのか。
At least I shot down one main character. Or at least big side character. Be right back. Actually, who am I kidding? I should sing the outro and just be done with the stream for tonight. Unless I start streaming again. Here we go. Ready? Underneath the silver moon we find our way to harmony. Golden light surrounds us, setting all our spirits free. Feel the earth beneath your feet, the rhythm of eternity. Heartbeat of the universe, it's flowing endlessly. Silver and golden moon, heal us with your gentle light. Silver and golden moon, guide us through the darkest night. When stars align and shadows hazel dance beneath the twilight. Twilight in our eye will bring peace, will bring peace like a grand fleece with the golden light. Will bring love, will bring heart back to where we'll know it's right. And we'll go with you, he's away the wild soul. We're to the edge of what we know, to beseech what is above. Then bring it back from above, then build it right from the start. For it to be even greater, no longer better, getting better. To our heart. Silver and golden moon, heal us from all hate and strife. Silver and golden moon, guide us to the brightest light. Silver and golden moon, heal us with reason and rhyme. Silver and golden moon, guide us to the brightest time. has been Chris Martin 424 BeetleBird, singing and playing Gundam and talking psychics, and there was Dusty, Berserk, and a few other people there. Thank y'all for listening and watching. Y'all have a great day or night or whatever time it is. Good lucky, knuckle bump, bye bye.